So I've been thinking a little bit more about this free speech thing, and I guess it's all a matter of where you place free speech. How far along the to the top or to the bottom of the totem pole you want to put free speech. Could free speech be something that is above everything else? Yeah, I would say so. I say it's possible that free speech could actually be above everything else. I mean, what I do with Spiralvent in terms of criticizing religion, like, I mean, that's not something that could have been done, very freely, even maybe 50 years ago. Or not even 50 years ago, but the last time there was a blasphemy case in Canada, I think it was like in the 30s, I think. I could be wrong about that, but or the 80s. I should have known that, but it was a very long time, and it didn't amount to anything really. So I mean, what I do with Spiralvent in terms of criticizing religion from an atheist perspective, could be a free speech issue that was kind of under the radar a few decades ago. So I think it was the 80s actually, because they were talking about Monty Python and all this stuff. So I mean, something around that. But anyway, I should have known that. But maybe I'll give you an update some other time. Which brings me to another issue about the Bertrand Russell quote that I made in the previous video about, if 50 million people say something really silly, it's still something really silly. I could have been wrong about if it was Bertrand Russell. I did some initial research and it seemed to be from Bertrand Russell, but it could have been from some other guy. So I don't know. But if 50 million people say a silly thing, it's still a silly thing. But yeah, going back to the free speech thing, I think it could be something that exists above everything else, provided it doesn't incite hatred, violence, anything like that. And I think my next endeavor is to sort of understand what free speech is, because I think for a lot of people there might be confusion as to what constitutes free speech. I think there's issues around harassment, violence, hate crime, hate speech, things like those that don't really get clearly defined sometimes when it comes to hate speech or anything versus free speech. So there's issues around where people might start blending definitions. So I mean, if you're inciting violence or you're inciting hatred or you're inciting genocide or things like those, like, I mean, you're calling for the killing of of a certain group of people, then I think there's areas there that do kind of start where people get confused as to what exactly it is they're doing. And maybe to their own ends, there might be some sort of hijacking of free speech laws and free speech freedoms that they use to their advantage. So I'm not saying that free speech is everything and anything somebody just feels like doing because it's their freedom. There's also freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, freedom of association, all these things that I think a lot of people would naturally want to blend into like their own little mix of what it is. But free speech is free speech, and I think I'm getting to some sort of conclusion of it being sort of above pretty much everything. But it also depends on public being very educated, or at least liberal, when it comes to these unspoken agreements as to what you can and can't get away with. But I still think there's some validity to basically, the nitty-gritty of, like, on the previous video I was talking about free speech as it relates to the whole gay thing or the whole homosexuality or sexuality thing. And I still do believe that there's something very human about sexuality, and I know it sounds pretty obvious when I'm saying it now, but there's something that's very human about sexuality that I feel might trump free speech, depending on how you define free speech. Like I said, I think there's people who would usurp free speech as some sort of monstrous kind of blending together of hate and bigotry and things like that. And I think purposefully so. I don't think that it's necessarily something that people are confused about. I generally think people know what they're doing when they're doing it. Which brings me to another point as well. Like I think there's a side to me that I feel is naturally open to free speech. And I think this is an important point too. Maybe not for everybody, but I think for some people, the matching between their behavior and the logistics or the legality and the legislation and the protests and all this stuff happens for them more easily than it's happening for me right now. I think there's an issue of the intellect behind the intellectualization of free speech as opposed to the way you naturally are. And not to big myself up or anything, but I think I naturally listen to a lot of stuff. I've never really run into a really hateful person, like run into anybody personally that's like just blatantly hateful and vitriolic and filled with like venom. But I think I do, when I think about my life, I think I'm a generally really open person when it comes to listening to other ideas and ideas that don't necessarily agree with mine. So naturally I feel fairly liberal on the matter. I do think I listen to a lot of shit, to tell you the truth. So, without, and without even responding sometimes, so I do feel like I listen to a lot of shit. Not from friends and stuff like that, but over the course of my life, I do listen to a lot of fucking bullshit, and still feel fine. I don't feel like my rights have been trampled on or anything like that, but that's on a personal level, and that's, so I'm saying there's a side of the intellectualization of what free speech is and what freedom of expression is and things like that, that I feel really ties more into legislature and government. So I mean, I think for a large part of the issue too is what the government can and can't do when it comes to free speech. So I think these are issues I'm going to continue looking into, and try to find my way around this whole thing. But maybe I'm making myself feel better too by saying, well, I'm naturally open-minded and blah blah blah. But like, I mean, I'm not saying I'm naturally open-minded. I'm just saying when I think about it, like there's not a lot I get really offended by, in terms of subject matter, but I don't know, it's something to think about. But that's where I am today. Today was sort of I woke up, I had a couple beers at like 9 a.m. I just decided to do a video because it was on my mind, and I definitely got to do more reading on this. I definitely got to do more reading on this. Like, what is free speech anyway, and should it trump everything else? Anyway, that's my video. Bye.